Good morning, this is our 6.04 recording. We're going to do textbook pages 214 to 215. The problem set is 15 through 30, every other odd. We're going to do problems 15, 19, 23, and then you'll be able to attempt 27 on your own.
But just a reminder that fractions, when you multiply them, it's top times top and bottom times bottom. And for dividing, it is top times bottom and bottom times top of the second fraction. All right, so let's start with number 15. Number 15 is x squared times x minus 1 over x plus 5 times x minus 3. This is going to be multiplied by x plus 5 over x times x minus 1. Now in your book, it does not have the x squared in parentheses. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like, or the x in parentheses. But because it's multiply, it's written right next to another parenthesis. You can put those in if you feel like they help you. Okay, it might be a little bit easier to see that these are all factors then. And since they're all factors, we can cancel them. Now, let me show you what it would look like if there were not all factors, because this is very important. If I take this off over here, then that is not all factored. Now this is all factored. Because if I take those parentheses off, not everything is multiply. Now everything is multiply. So the first thing you're going to want to do is factor. If you're given a trinomial, you're going to want to factor first. So just like we were looking in our adding and subtracting problems on Monday, we're going to want to look to factor, because then we had that 1a where we can do canceling. Well, remember our rules for canceling. If we have, the rules were one on the top and one on the bottom. One of what? One factor. So do we have a factor on the top that matches a factor on the bottom? They can be up and down from each other. They can be sort of across from each other. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter as long as they're identical. And we do have two factors that are the same, x plus 5 and x plus 5. So what we're really doing is dividing by x plus 5 on the top. And to keep fractions equal, you have to do the same thing on the bottom. So when we divide by x plus 5 on the bottom, these things cancel and become 1. X plus 5 divided by x plus 5 is 1. Okay, so it's kind of a lot of rules mixed in there. Okay, the next thing is another factor that can cancel. I've got an x minus 1 on the top. So let me mix it up and put a highlighter in here. And I have an x minus 1 on the bottom. So essentially what we're doing is divide the top by x minus 1. And always, to keep fractions equal, you have to do the same on the bottom. So divide the bottom by x minus 1. This will cancel and be a 1. And this will cancel and be a 1. There is one more thing that we can factor. Anybody have an idea what it is? Awesome work. We do have an x squared and an x. Now, those are not identical, but they can cancel. They can be divided by the same thing. We can divide by x on the top and divide by x on the bottom, and this will leave us with x, and this will leave us with 1. Let me pause there for questions. Give me a green check if you're okay with the canceling so far and ready to move on. Everything else you'll notice is canceled out here. So that just leaves an x on the top, and on the bottom we have 1 times x minus 3. So far we have x minus 3 times 1 times 1. So we just have x minus 3 left. And this is our answer. All right, number 19. Number 19 is 3 times w squared minus 4. Right away, that sets an alarm off for me. W squared minus 4. That should for you too. It's a formula that I said you're going to have to really pay attention to because it's in many, many problems. 6w over w plus 2 and w minus 2. All right, in green, tell me what I have there. What is that formula called? All right, that's your first extra credit piece, is to send me difference of squares. Send me those 3 words. Don't forget the subject line. I'll type it in the chat box. E/CA2. Oops, that should be a colon, not a quote at the end of the line. But the subject line should be E/CA2. Your first phrase in the body of the K-mail should say difference of squares, just as a reminder of how important that is. Good, so that's what's in green there, is difference of squares. Remember that w squared minus 4 can be written as w squared minus 2 squared. So that means this part, when we factor it, becomes w plus 2 and w minus 2. Writing it all on the top, and then everything we have on the bottom is w minus 2 times w plus 2. Now we can do our canceling. W plus 2 matches up with w plus 2 on the bottom. W minus 2 on the top matches up with w minus 2 on the bottom. And now you might think we have nothing left on the bottom, but don't forget that when you're multiplying or dividing, nothing isn't 0. 0 changes what the value that you have. If you multiply or you can't divide by 0, but if you multiply by 0, it changes the value of what you have. Changes it to 0 always, right? So what is not going to change the value that we have is going to be the number 1 down here. So we have a 1 on the bottom. All right, so now we can go ahead and multiply. We've canceled everything we can. So 3 times 6 is 18 w over 1, which is really just 18w. And that's our answer. All right, so up here again, the reminders. Number 1 is to factor. So that's why that item was written in green, because that needs to be factored. 1A is to cancel. So if you are able to factor something, you want to look to do that canceling, following those rules. And then 2, multiply like normal. All right, number 23. 23 is a dividing problem. And it is d squared minus 25 that's a 2, there we go, over 6d minus 2 divided by d squared minus 2d minus 15, 18d squared minus 60. Okay, so that's the problem. Now, I'm going to tell you what a lot of you are going to do, because you're going to want to skip steps. And I don't like to skip steps. I like to see it on paper and not keep so much in my head, because then I find myself making mental errors. So what I'm going to do right now is write d squared minus 25 over 60 minus 2 times. I am now changing this to the multiplication problem first. This has to be its reciprocal. 18d squared minus 16d over d squared minus 2d minus 15. Now, some of you will want to just go to factoring, and then you'll try to flip them and write them the right way. When you, for example, instead of writing 18d squared minus 6d, you'll try to write the factored form in the next step, which is okay. You can do it that way and then flip it, as long as you make sure that you're not factoring and flipping at the same time, because I guarantee you will mess up a factor and accidentally put it on the bottom when it should be on the top, or on the top when it should be on the bottom. So be really careful about that. Take time to just write it down. It seriously only takes a couple of seconds. When I'm not talking through it, it takes a couple of seconds to do that on your own, and it just helps you stay free from those little tiny errors that always get you. Okay, so now that we've changed this to multiplication, we can follow all of our rules. So our instructions are a little different for dividing. 1, change to multiply problem. I just ran out of room, otherwise I would have wrote multiplication. All right, I got to do it. I'm going to try to fit it. There, I made it. So change it to a multiplication problem. Then 2 would be to factor. And part of that factoring will be to cancel. And then we can regular multiply. Actually do the multiplying. Okay, just like last time, there was a big bell that went off in my head when I saw this, because it was a binomial with something squared minus another thing that can work out to be something squared. So this is d squared minus 5 squared. So that factor is d plus 5 and d minus 5 over 6d minus 2 times, you know what, I'm not going to write 6d minus 2. Let's go ahead and do that factoring for that one also. So 6d minus 2, there is a GCF of 2. We're left with 3d minus 1 when we pull the 2 out front. For the next part up here, most of the time problems are written so that we'll be left with a 3d minus 1 up here. So let's see if that's the case here. So that would mean for there to be a 1 here, I would have to pull out a 6d out front. So does that make sense with this one? 6 times 3 is 18, d times d is d squared. Yep, it sure does. So a lot of times problems will match up like that. So keeping that in mind, let's go right away to d minus 5. There's 2 reasons that I did that. First of all, because there is a minus sign in the trinomial here and here, I know the bigger number has to have the minus sign. The bigger number is going to be a 5, and the smaller number is going to be a 3. Now, how did I know that so quickly? A couple of reasons. I told you a lot of times problems are written, not always, but a lot of times problems are written so that they match up. So I'm thinking either d plus 5 or d minus 5 is going to match up. I'm choosing the minus version because of those minus signs in the trinomial, and because 15 is made up of 5 times 3. So to check this, I have to FOIL it. D squared minus 5d plus 3d minus 15. D squared minus 2d when I combine like terms minus 15. That's exactly what I started with up here. They are the same, so that is factored. That is the right way to factor. So I used the top to sort of give me a clue and get me started on the right path rather than trying everything, all different factors of 15. Now I can identify what needs to be canceled. D minus 5 on the top, d minus 5 on the bottom, 3d minus 1 on the bottom, 3d minus 1 on the top, 2 on the bottom, and the 6 on the top. This will leave me with a 3. So I really have 3d times d plus 5 on the top, and that is done. That is the answer.
Okay, so sometimes you might see the answer distributed here, where this would become 3d squared, multiplying the 3d through, plus 15d. So sometimes you see it written that way, over d plus 3. And I'll let you try number 27 on your own. Good luck. Let me know if you have questions.